Hey, we're live. I'm Ben Rufana. Today I'm with Chuck Hunter, and ooh, we're getting on a few minutes late, but we're going to talk about an ancient Vedic healing practice or ritual referred to as Yagyas, depending on what part of India you're from or in, or if you're from India. And in the south of India, they say it a little differently, yagnas. But so when I first learned about, actually going back years ago, I think it was 2004 or something, I was staying in Delhi in northern India at a Bengali Hindu temple. Uh, Bengal is the northeastern state next to Bangladesh. And so one of the priests took a liking to me, and he was encouraging me to show up for one of the festivals that they were having, and I could just feel throughout my body the reverberation of those ancient Vedic chants in Sanskrit, and then I was hearing about, I became familiar with the pujas that they would do, where they invoke the deity, and they do them for various purposes. And usually the pujas are short, they could be like, I don't know, maybe an hour or so or something. And you have a number of people attending. But then I learned about the yagyas, which are much longer in duration, and it's this intensive Vedic healing ritual for with a more specific purpose, and they'll go on for days and weeks or even a month or so. And so I'm joined again with my guest Chuck Hunter, and we're Chuck is connected with some Vedic Pandits in India, and he helps to facilitate these yagyas for people, to set them up so that people can schedule them and have them performed. And it's very powerful. So, Chuck, you want to jump in?
I do, Ben. Thanks so much for the introduction and getting this StreamYard going. It's exciting for me. It's the first time I've been on StreamYard. Mm-hmm. And, I learned to practice transcendental meditation, which is a Vedic meditation technique, in 1971. And I didn't really become regular with it until 1980. But then in 1996, I was living in South Florida, and I helped to host a Vedic Jyotish team. Now, Jyotish is the study of light, or Indian astrology, if you will. Mm-hmm. And the Jyotish team came and stayed in Naples, Florida, where I was living, and I facilitated clients coming in and talking to these guys, because I could understand British Indian English easily, whereas some of the people, some of our clients, had trouble deciphering the dialect.
Yeah.
So I learned a little bit about Jyotish then, and I had a yagya commissioned for me. I didn't know what a yagya was. I had no idea. Well, I did know that it was a Vedic ceremony, and so that explained enough to me to say, sure, I'll try it. And it was scheduled on an auspicious date a few days later. And of course, India is about 11 hours ahead of Naples. And so I'm in bed and I'm asleep, and I begin to hear this in the background, and I wake up. I know there's somebody in my bedroom. Yeah. and there's nobody there. And I check the house out, and there's nobody there. And then I remembered, oh, wow, these yagyas are really powerful if I can hear them here in the United States. And so that began an association with Pandit Dixit, Pandit DS, Devi Shankar Dixit, just outside Kanpur, India. And I went and visited them in 2009 and 2010 for the Navratri, for the 9 days of Mother Divine celebrations. And they had an ashram there going full steam ahead. And Pandit Dixit asked me if I would facilitate these yagyas, if I would help to organize these yagyas and act as liaison to the Western world for the website jyotish-yagya.com. And I agreed, but I had no idea how it was going to grow and how much good we could do in the world with it. So that's kind of my introduction. What you have other questions, Ben?
Yeah, I know you have limited time because we got on a little late here, but
let's have this as an ongoing thing. I love being on camera.
Okay, so for me, my own experience with it, like, I grew up with a lot of physical, emotional abuse, the trauma that carried over, and that was playing out in my attempts to form attachments or relationships. And there are times, like back in my 20s, where I got to work with some very gifted healers, but often there are these long gaps, like years, sometimes between finding someone who had these capabilities, these gifts. But then I started going on the Vision Quest, which is trained by this Native American doctor, medicine man. And so I go out 4 days and nights, no food, no water, alone in the mountains. And that is extraordinarily powerful. But I've been going in the spring and fall, and there are all these months in between. And when you carry trauma like this from your childhood and adolescence, those wounds run extraordinarily deep. And so I've kept myself open to exploring any practice or intervention within reason that holds promise. And when I heard about the Yagyas, and I started having them commissioned or scheduled for myself, is same deal like you're talking about, like they're performed in India, and I could feel them from the distance. I'd be, say, in New York or Boston, I'd be out in Idaho, and I could just feel this presence, this power. And even like I had this housemate at one point, I stayed with in Boston at times, and he could feel that intensity, and he went outside one night because he was feeling it. He felt he needed a ground, so he was standing barefoot on the ground outside to ground himself. But what I found is, by doing the yagyas, is that, and my favorite is the Mahachandi. It invokes this like war goddess Durga, and for me that was perfect. It was just feeling this extraordinary, powerful presence, and I felt like each time I did that, it was helping to heal these the trauma that I was carrying. And when you carry this kind of deep emotional wounding or trauma, and it goes back to childhood and it was reenacted through subsequent relationships, those wounds run extraordinarily deep. And so, for me, it's been this whole combination, like the intensive system of meditation practices I developed, doing sessions with gifted healers, doing the yagyas, doing the Vision Quest, like all these different interventions. But for me, I feel like it's facilitated this evolution over time, where I gradually was able to heal these deep emotional wounds, these distorted models through which I would form unhealthy attachments. The unhealthy attachments begin to dissolve. I begin to, in turn, feel attracted to and attract into my life companions who are healthier and better match with whom I could create more meaningful and deeply fulfilling relationships. But now, the most powerful work that I do is when I work individually with people one-on-one. And I can work with people remotely, but when I work with people remotely, I also, uh, I hear a lot of people talk about getting remote healing sessions, but I would say the Yagyas are the most powerful of any kind of remote work that I've seen or have experienced. And so I like to provide as many resources as I possibly can for people, that because I know how horrendous it is if you carry a lot of this childhood trauma and you have these patterns where you attract individuals into your life, you get tangled up with someone who's a narcissist, or someone with borderline tendencies, or who's just abusive in whatever way. And or again, if you carry these abandonment wounds from childhood, so it we need, on one hand, there's like the meditation practices that I teach, and there's qigong practices, for instance. There's practices that we could do individually, but we all need intervention to facilitate the healing that we cannot fully do on our own. Every one of us needs intervention.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. That's so true. Not just the intervention, but our own individual programs, like getting up in the morning and doing awakening the body with some lengthening exercises. And then for me anyway, some sitting meditation. And then I go out and take a run. This morning I did 6 miles, which is pretty great for a 74-year-old guy. I'm really grateful to be able to do it. And the thing is when you said that there were gaps in your training or in your connection with the healing doctors, I think that's natural. I think that nature will guide us to, even though we're still real eager to advance and move on, I think nature will guide us to take a rest. Like as a runner, I have to take a day off a week. And some of my days are short runs, just a couple of miles. Other days are 6 miles. Other days are 12 or 15 miles at a time. But you can't do that over and over and over again. I mean, it's like your vision quests, spring and fall vision quests. To me, that's perfect, because you've got 4 months, 3 months in between each quest, at least, that gives you a chance to integrate the situation. And I feel that's really true with the Yagyas, because when I start a Yagya, I usually have a day or two where my karma is being burnt pretty rapidly, and I can be grouchy. I might have the sniffles, have the flu or something, or feel like I have the flu, but it's gone in a day or two. And then I find this blissful floating that just really aids me in my achievement and my attaining my goals. And I need to go today because I can't be late for this appointment.
Okay.
But I'd really like to get back on here with you, and let's keep talking about Yagyas and spiritual evolution and psycho-spiritual therapies.
Okay. Yeah, we could jump back in. Could I add something real quick? Do you have a minute?
Of course.
Okay. I think a lot of it, like in years past, there were many like extraordinarily powerful, gifted Native American doctors, medicine men and women. But as time has gone on, there's just very, very few people working on this level or these levels. And so for me, that's why there were these gaps. And so for some of us, because we don't have access, myself, and I see many people who suffer because they're carrying these traumas and they need consistent intervention. And I know, like, for instance, when I've worked with people, when I've stacked sessions with people 2, 3, 4, or 5 days in a row, that's when the most powerful intervention. Sometimes we need some processing time in between. But I'd say for myself, the gaps were a tremendous hindrance, and so I ended up suffering far longer because of that. So for me to learn about, to be able to experience the yagyas, it helped me to fill in those gaps so that I could receive intervention when I otherwise wouldn't have had it available, if that makes sense.
Cool. Yeah, it does make sense. It does make sense. And I think it's going back to nature. I think that it's natural in many cases to do a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we each will know how far we can push ourselves. I may push myself to points where I'll break, and at that point my body will say, okay, chill out, dude. You're not going anywhere for the next month. You're just going to have to take nice, long, easy walks, and I'm still alive and I'm making it, and my body is doing the thing that it does best, and that's heal itself. So, Ben, I do have to go, and
okay.
I would love to get back together with you.
Sure.
We'll do something in the next few days. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Happy Thanksgiving, man. It's really great to see you again.
Okay. You too. Okay. See you soon. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. Hey, it's just me now. I'll take a few minutes. Yeah, again, Chuck will be back on soon. We'll talk more. And yeah, again, I've explored like so many different forms of practice and healing interventions over the years, and just going back to at the age of 20, well, even before 17, I took off on my own. I was living in a community of predominantly Kiowa Indians in southwestern Oklahoma, attending the peyote meetings with the native elders. And then is in the peyote meetings, I met my mentor, Horace Dulkai, one of the last surviving traditional doctors among the Kiowa tribe. And it took me time. I gradually started working with people in my mid-20s, and then over the years building my practice. And at 31, I started going back to do the Vision Quest. And again, from my own personal experience, when you carry a lot of these traumatic wounds, you experience trauma starting, say, your childhood. Some people I work with, it begins in infancy even. And so maybe infancy, childhood, adolescence. And oftentimes these patterns are reenacted in our adult relationships. It could be continued with family members. It could be reenacted in our romantic relationships, our attempts to form attachments, whatever. And so these patterns can be so deeply entrenched in us. And we tend to attract a lot of the same kinds of individuals into our life, reenact the same types of dynamics. And oftentimes, many of us are just at a loss as we don't know what to do about it. And it elicits a lot of difficult, uncomfortable, and sometimes even excruciatingly painful emotions. And so it's important, we need to have consistent daily practices that we work with, for instance, such as the meditations that I teach, that I go through that in other videos that you can see on my channel. So be sure to subscribe so that you can go back and watch them, and also click the like and even share this video if you find value as well. So yes, we need daily practice. Like the forms of meditation I teach get you more into your body and help you to work constructively with your emotions, because in order to heal these deep emotional wounds, you have to be able to feel it in order to heal it. So the meditations I teach are more specifically to get you into your body and working constructively with your emotions. We then need to be making use of the most powerful therapeutic interventions. And So I've done lots of things, which again, you'll hear me talk about them in other videos. I started working with a psychotherapist in my mid to late 20s, and then deep tissue body work. I worked with some gifted healers. I've done acupuncture at times. I've done these yagyas that we were talking about here. I went and did the Vision Quest. Now, most of you, you're not going to go do a Vision Quest. Some of you, a few exceptions, well, but that's a lot to get through. 4 days and nights. You're not eating, you're not drinking, you're alone in the mountains. It's a pretty intense thing to get through. And if you have the opportunity, say, for instance, you can work with me individually, and especially if we happen to be in the same geographic location, at any point in time. That's the individual sessions are extraordinarily powerful when it comes to healing the deep emotional wounds, the traumas that we carry, and even addressing a lot of physical health related issues, digestive, respiratory disorders, and all that. However, if you're way off in some other part of the United States, some state where I don't go to or haven't gone to or whatever, I can't go everywhere. and there's very few healers working on a similar level, that possess these kinds of gifts of healing. Years ago, as I said earlier in the video, among the various Native American tribes, there were many extraordinarily powerful traditional doctors, medicine men and women. They just had these just mind-blowingly intense, powerful gifts of healing. But as time has gone on, much of that has sadly been lost. Maybe if you go to Brazil or Indonesia, there are traditions there where there are these really powerful gifted healers. But much of North America, it's rare to find anyone who could work on these levels. And so one of the things I like about the yagyas is that you could be anywhere in the world. You could be way up there living in the Arctic tundra or something, or Siberia, or just anywhere. And you could have these yagyas commissioned for you, and they're powerful. And there are very different kinds of gifts or healing powers. And we may address some of this again when Chuck and I resume our discussion. But even among the Native American tribes, the different traditional Native doctors possess very different kinds of gifts of healing. And the Native people, they knew these traditional doctors would have a reputation, like some were, would specialize in working with assisting people with respiratory or neurological disorders, for instance. It wasn't all the same. They had their areas of specialization. The kind of power that I work with is, very, it's very earth-based. It gets people into their bodies and all that. And it's especially very good for healing a lot of these traumatic wounds and, again, a lot of the physical issues. Again, yagyas are a very different kind of a power, and they do the yagyas. They're invoking, specific deities like Durga, the goddess Durga, or Shiva, and other deities, and they have very specific effects. They address a whole range of different issues, and so we'll dive back into this further when I have Chuck back on. We'll talk about this more in depth and the history and all that. But I always encourage people, especially if you're struggling with different challenges in your life, different emotional wounding, keep yourself open, to explore different possibilities. I understand there are people who call themselves skeptics, but a true skeptic is somebody who it's like, I'm not going to form an opinion or a judgment either way. I'm going to go in and I'm going to test this out. I'm going to see if it holds water, if there's validity, if this, is really does what it says it's going to do. So yeah, keep yourself open. That's how, had I not done that, I would have never healed the traumas of my own past, my own emotional wounding. So I always keep myself open to explore, and I always like to learn and be growing and evolving. And that's another thing about the Yagyas. It just facilitates this evolution. So anyway, we'll pick up this discussion again when I can have Chuck back on. We'll go more into depth. We'll see what his schedule is in the coming days or week or so, and we'll dive back into it. But